The night my own daughter tried to poison me, I realized family can be the sharpest weapon. Betrayal cuts deeper than any blade, especially when it comes from the blood you swore to protect. But in America, we don't just give up. We fight for justice, for legacy, for the truth. And trust me, you won't believe what I did next. Before we go on, make sure you subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Michael Harris. I'm 62, a baker by trade, a widower by circumstance, and someone who thought the worst pain life could give me had already been delivered the day Evelyn, my wife, passed away. I was wrong. The greatest pain was still waiting at the dinner table of my own daughter. For years, I lived quietly. My days were filled with flour and dough, ovens glowing, customers greeting me like family. At night, silence swallowed the house. One chair at the table, one plate, one fork. It became a ritual of loneliness I accepted like gravity, unshakable, constant, until the phone rang. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in months. Claire. Her voice trembled, but carried an urgency that didn't match the casual words. Dad, we've moved into a new home. Daniel and we want to see you. Dinner, Saturday night. Can you come? My first instinct was no. 2 years earlier, she'd left my house furious, defending Daniel's reckless plea for money I refused to give. That moment cut like a blade. She chose him over me. Since then, silence. But the human heart is a strange machine. It aches for reconciliation, even when logic warns against it. Evelyn used to whisper to me, "Family always finds its way home." Those words echo in me like scripture. Against my better judgment, I said yes. Saturday came. I pulled on my old blazer, polished shoes Evelyn once insisted I buy, and grabbed a bottle of Bordeaux she had adored. I told myself I was going for her, for the chance she might be right, that family could mend itself with time. The Uber ride was 40 minutes of restless thoughts. I pictured Claire as a little girl, sticky fingers from cookie dough, laughing until flour dusted her hair. That memory warmed me until the car slowed in front of something I could barely comprehend. Their new home rose like a fortress of wealth. Columns, marble, a circular drive around a fountain spraying arcs of light. A mansion fit for people I did not know, not for the daughter I raised on modest means and the son-in-law who once begged me for rent money. The sight struck me harder than I expected. Where had this life come from? The door opened before I could knock. Claire stood there, radiant in silk, her face lighting up with a smile that almost fooled me. Almost. Daniel loomed behind her, suit sharp enough to slice through the tension, his teeth gleaming too white, too rehearsed. "Dad!" Claire wrapped her arms around me, squeezing tight, as though she could press years of silence into one embrace. I hugged her back, trying to feel the warmth I once knew. Daniel shook my hand like a salesman closing a deal. Inside, chandeliers blazed, marble floors reflected like mirrors, and art hung that could have fed a family for a year. Every detail screamed luxury, but instead of awe, I felt a chill. It was too perfect, too polished, like a stage set for a play I hadn't auditioned for. Then she appeared, Elena, the housekeeper. Middle-aged, eyes lined with fatigue, but there was kindness in her gaze. "Welcome, Mr. Harris," she said softly. And then something flickered across her face. A warning? Concern? It vanished so fast I almost doubted I saw it. Almost. We moved into the dining room, where a table longer than my entire kitchen awaited. The china gleamed, the glasses sparkled. Claire poured wine into mine with hands steady, but eyes too careful. Daniel raised his glass, booming like a toastmaster. "To family," he declared. I lifted my glass, But even as the rim brushed my lips, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out beneath the tablecloth, shielding the screen. An unknown number lit the screen. Just 3 words, all in capital letters. Leave! Don't trust them! My vision blurred. My hand shook so violently the wine almost spilled across the white linen. My heart slammed against my chest. Boom! Boom! So loud I swore they could hear it across the table. Cold sweat slid down my spine as I shoved the phone back into my pocket, forcing my trembling lips into something that resembled a smile. "Everything okay, Dad?" Claire asked, her tone light, but her stare probing. "Fine," I said, my voice even. I tried to eat, tried to listen to their small talk about real estate and renovations, but my mind replayed that text over and over. Who sent it? What did it mean? My daughter sat across from me, smiling like old times, yet something in her expression felt manufactured, fragile, like one wrong move would crack the porcelain mask she wore. As Elena set down the appetizers, her hand shook slightly. She caught my eye, just for a second, before looking away. I wanted to ask her, but Daniel's voice filled the air, smooth, persuasive, coaxing me into his narrative of success. The room glowed with wealth, but beneath the glittering chandeliers, a shadow stretched invisible. Every instinct screamed at me. Something wasn't right. Something dangerous lurked behind the silverware and polished smiles. I had no proof, only the text message and the strange weight of the atmosphere. But my gut, the same gut that had kept me alive through decades of business, risk, and loss, told me this was no ordinary reunion. It was a trap, and I was already inside it. The moment I slid the phone back into my pocket, I realized I was in enemy territory, and the people smiling across from me were the ones I was supposed to trust the most. Claire leaned forward, her eyes bright, her hand brushing mine with a softness that should have been comforting but instead felt rehearsed. "Dad, we're just so glad you're here. It feels like the old days again, doesn't it?" Her words carried warmth, but her tone was sharp, almost too sharp, like a violin string pulled to breaking point. Old days? My mind recoiled. The old days had been Evelyn's voice humming in the kitchen, Claire sneaking pieces of dough and laughing when I pretended to be angry, flour dust on her cheeks. The old days had heart. This dinner? This was theater. Every move choreographed. Every smile perfectly placed. Daniel took over, his voice rolling across the table like a salesman at a convention. "Michael, I can't tell you how impressed I am with what you've built. Harris and Sons, it's a true empire. 7 bakeries now, right? That's remarkable." He leaned back, folding his hands behind his head, as though he already owned it all. I nodded, keeping my voice even. 7. He flashed a grin. "Have you ever thought about what happens next? I mean, you've worked hard your whole life. Don't you think it's time to pass the torch? Retire? Enjoy life? Maybe travel?" Claire jumped in, her smile gentle, but her eyes drilling into me. "Dad, we just don't want to see you burn out. You've given everything to the bakeries. Maybe it's time to let someone else carry it forward." The words hit like a trap snapping shut. Retire. Pass the torch. Someone else. My skin prickled. "I'm not burned out," I said firmly. "The bakeries keep me alive." Daniel laughed quickly. Too quickly. Of course. But you know how the law works. Without a proper succession plan, without signatures, without legal documents, all your hard work could just evaporate. You wouldn't want that, would you? Legal documents. Signatures. My stomach turned. I reached for my glass, trying to steady myself, but after just a few sips, my head felt heavier than it should. My vision tilted slightly. That wasn't wine. it was something more. Elena returned, balancing soup bowls on a silver tray. Her hands shook, so subtly most would never notice. But I saw. She placed the bowl in front of me, and as she leaned closer, her eyes flicked once toward my glass. Just for a fraction of a second. Then, with calculated clumsiness, she dropped a spoon onto the marble floor. The clang snapped the room into silence. Somewhere, a knife slipped against a plate with a faint screech, sharp enough to raise goosebumps on my arms. Elena bent down slowly, deliberately, and when she rose again, her lips barely moved. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read them. Be careful. I kept my face neutral, forcing a smile as though nothing had happened. But inside, my heart pounded like a war drum. Daniel broke the silence, his tone smooth again, as if nothing had cracked the performance. From somewhere deep in the house, a grandfather clock struck once, the sound slicing through the air like a blade. Each strike felt less like time passing and more like a countdown. Daniel's voice carried over it. Real estate's been incredible for us. Perfect timing, perfect deals. Princeton was just waiting for us. Isn't that right, Claire? Yes, she answered quickly, her hand gripping her napkin so tightly I thought the fabric might tear. I stared at them both, my mind flashing back to the last time Daniel had pitched me one of his perfect deals. A tech startup he swore would revolutionize the way people ordered food. He needed $50,000. I refused. 6 months later, the company was gone, bankrupt, leaving him in debt. He never paid me back, never even apologized. Evelyn had warned me. He's always selling something, Michael. Don't buy it. And here he was again, still selling. Except this time, the stakes weren't a failed app or a lost loan. This time, it was me. My phone buzzed again. I slipped it from my pocket beneath the tablecloth, shielding the screen. Another message from the same number. The drink isn't safe. Act normal. My throat went dry. I set the phone face down on my lap and forced my hands to remain steady. Daniel poured himself more wine, watching me too closely, his smile never touching his eyes. Dad, Claire said softly, you've always been the strongest man I know. But even strong men have to rest someday. Don't you want peace? Don't you want to know that everything you built is safe? Protected? Safe. Protected. The words should have comforted me, but instead they cut deep, twisting in my chest. For a fleeting second, I wanted to believe her. Wanted to think she was the same little girl who once cried over a goldfish, who used to cling to me during thunderstorms. But the way she leaned in now, eyes sharp, voice honeyed and rehearsed. It wasn't my daughter speaking. It was someone else, someone I didn't recognize, and that realization tore me apart. I looked into her eyes, searching for the daughter I knew, for a flicker of guilt, for hesitation, for anything real. But all I saw was resolve. Elena returned again, this time with a tray of bread. As she leaned across the table, her wrist brushed mine. Just the faintest touch, but it jolted me like an electric shock. Her eyes flicked once more to my glass, then away. I pushed the bread around my plate, buying time, calculating. If I accused them now, I'd have no proof. If I refused to drink, I'd expose my suspicion. And if I played along too obviously, I'd fall into their trap. So I smiled, raised my glass, and let the liquid swirl beneath the light without drinking. To family, I said. My voice carried the weight of irony, but they didn't hear it. Daniel clinked his glass to mine with too much force, wine splashing onto the tablecloth. In that moment, I knew two things. One, I wasn't safe in that house. And two, whoever was warning me through those texts knew more about what was happening than I did. The trap was closing, but I wasn't about to be the prey. Not yet. I rose from the table with a calmness I didn't feel. My pulse hammered so hard I thought it might echo across the dining room. Behind me, a fork slipped against china with a faint clink, ordinary to anyone else, but to me it sounded like an alarm bell. "Excuse me," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Restroom." Claire nodded quickly, too quickly, as though she had rehearsed this permission. "Down the hall, second door left." But I didn't turn left. I kept walking straight, my footsteps muffled on the marble floor. The hallway stretched longer than it should, lined with paintings in gilded frames, their eyes seeming to follow me as I passed. At the end, a wide arch opened into the kitchen. Elena stood at the sink, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing a glass with slow precision. She didn't look at me, but when I froze in the doorway, her shoulders stiffened, a tiny acknowledgement that she knew I was there. The back door was just beyond her. My chance. My escape. I moved toward it quietly, expecting her to turn and stop me, but she kept her back to me, washing the same glass over and over. And yet, her hand trembled just slightly, as if her silence was a signal. The door opened without a sound, the night air rushing over me like a blessing. Cool, clean, free. The manicured lawn glistened under motion sensor lights, blades of grass shining like they'd been cut with a ruler. I moved fast, following the edge of the yard toward a wrought iron gate at the far end. My phone buzzed in my pocket again, and with hands shaking, I pulled it out. The number called me before I could dial. I pressed the phone to my ear. "Who is this?" My whisper came out harsher than I intended. The voice on the other end was low, careful, deliberately neutral. "Mr. Harris, I hoped you would listen. Who are you? What do you know about my daughter? About Daniel? That isn't important right now. What matters is that you were in immediate danger tonight. The wine contained a compound. It doesn't kill. It clouds judgment, erases memory, makes you suggestible. After a few glasses, they would have presented documents, legal papers, power of attorney, complete transfer of your bakeries. You would have signed, and tomorrow, you'd remember nothing." I stopped dead in the middle of the lawn, staring up at the perfect facade of their mansion. My chest burned. That's insane. Claire would never. A pause. "Your son-in-law owes $2.5 million to very dangerous people. Gambling, high-stakes poker, sports betting with men who don't forgive late payments. Your daughter knows. She agreed. This was the only way out." My knees buckled, the night spinning around me. Claire, my Claire, the little girl who once shoved daisies into my hands and begged me to braid them into her hair. The child who once cried herself sick over a broken toy. How could she now be part of this? My throat closed as I whispered into the phone. No, she wouldn't. Not her. But even as the words left my mouth, the memory of her steady hand pushing the glass toward me at dinner replayed, undeniable and merciless. "She already has," the voice said flatly. "Think about it. Why were they pushing retirement? Why the questions about succession? Why the wine?" I thought about my dizziness after barely 2 sips, about Daniel's eager refills, Claire's forced smile, Elena's trembling hands. The pieces snapped into place with brutal clarity. "They were going to rob me blind," I muttered. "Not just rob you," the voice corrected. "Erase you. Legally, financially, emotionally. By the time you realized what had happened, it would be too late. Everything Evelyn helped you build would be gone." The name of my wife cut me like glass. I gripped the phone tighter, fury bubbling up where shock had been. "How do you know all this? Who the hell are you? I can't reveal myself. Not yet. But I had to warn you. Someone had to. I staggered against the gate, trying to catch my breath. So, what do I do now? Protect yourself. Leave immediately. Move your assets where they can't touch them. Call the police if you must, but be careful. They'll realize you're gone any minute. Desperation makes people dangerous. The call ended before I could respond. Silence rushed in, broken only by the distant hum of traffic beyond the mansion walls. I requested an Uber with clumsy fingers, setting the pickup point a block away. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes, I told myself. I could survive 5 minutes. But as I stood there, watching the house glow like a palace of lies, guilt knifed through me. My daughter was in there. My blood. My only child. And she had chosen Daniel's debts over me. The headlights of the Uber cut through the darkness, pulling me out of the spiral. I climbed in, giving my Newark address, but the driver glanced at me in the mirror. "You okay, sir? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," I muttered. We pulled away, the mansion shrinking in the distance, but my phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls from Claire, then another message. "Dad, where are you? We're worried sick." I stared at the words, bile rising in my throat. Worried sick? No, she wasn't worried. She was panicking. Their plan was unraveling. I almost deleted the text, but instead I saved it. Evidence. Proof. Because now I knew the truth. I wasn't just escaping a bad dinner. I was escaping a carefully staged crime. The driver switched on soft jazz, oblivious to the war raging inside me. My thoughts spun faster than the wheels beneath us. Evelyn's voice whispered in my memory, "When someone warns you about danger, listen first. Ask questions later." Well, I had listened. And now the questions were tearing me apart. Had Claire truly crossed the line? Or had Daniel dragged her into his darkness until she couldn't tell right from wrong? Would she have stopped him? Or was she the one who made sure the poison was poured into my glass? The Uber merged onto the highway, lights streaking past, each mile stretching the distance between me and the daughter I thought I knew. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure which was worse, losing Claire completely, or discovering she had already been lost long before tonight. The farther the Uber carried me from the mansion, the more my mind split in two. One voice screamed, "Keep going. Get safe. Forget them." But another, the voice that sounded so much like Evelyn, whispered, "Don't run. Not now. Not when everything's on the line." I stared at the city lights rushing by, my chest tightening until I couldn't breathe. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "My daughter and her husband are trying to poison me," I told the dispatcher, my voice sharp, urgent. "They have documents ready to steal everything I own. The address is 114 Cedar Lane, Princeton. You need to send officers now." The dispatcher's reply was calm but firm. "Stay away from the property, sir. Officers are on their way." But I already knew I wasn't going to stay away. If I let them destroy the evidence, I'd never prove what they'd done. They'd try again. Maybe with more subtlety. Maybe with more violence. I couldn't let Evelyn's life's work vanish because I was too afraid to face my own child. I leaned forward to the driver. "Change of plans. We're going back." He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, eyebrows raised. "Back to Princeton? Sir, you really don't look—" "Just drive," I snapped. "Please." The return trip felt heavier, the minutes stretching like hours. My heart thudded with every mile. I thought about the text messages, Elena's trembling hands, Daniel's forced smile, Claire's eyes that couldn't quite meet mine. My stomach turned, but beneath the fear was a steel resolve I hadn't felt in years. Tonight, I would stop running. By the time the car rolled to a stop at the end of their driveway, I could already see the faint flash of police lights 2 streets over, moving without sirens. They were coming. I had to hold out until they arrived. I walked up the curved drive, forcing my legs steady. The mansion loomed above me, glowing like a predator waiting in the dark. My hand trembled as I pressed the doorbell. The chimes echoed inside. Footsteps rushed to the door. Daniel yanked it open, his face a storm of relief and suspicion. "Dad, where the hell have you been? Claire thought." I cut him off with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just needed some air." That wine hit harder than I expected. His jaw tightened. Claire appeared behind him, her silk dress wrinkled now, her eyes red. She grabbed my arm too tightly, her voice trembling with practiced concern. "You scared us. Please, come back inside." The warmth of the foyer now felt suffocating. Every chandelier sparkled too brightly. Every polished surface mocked me with its perfection. I let them guide me back into the dining room, back into the theater of their lies. The table had been hastily rearranged. The legal papers I glimpsed earlier were gone. The glasses cleared. Only fresh tumblers sat waiting, as though nothing had happened. Elena moved quietly in the background, her face carefully blank, but her shoulders tight. I sank into my chair, forcing my breathing to remain calm. Daniel took his place across from me, his smile stretched thin, eyes sharp. Claire sat close to my side, her fingers lacing through mine with forced intimacy. "So," Daniel said brightly, "feeling better now? No more dizziness?" "Clear as a bell," I answered. My voice was steady, but inside my pulse screamed. "Good," Claire said, her smile faltering at the edges. "Then maybe we can continue. We still have so much to talk about." Daniel rose suddenly and walked to the liquor cabinet. His hands shook as he pulled down the bottle of Bordeaux I had brought. He poured into 2 glasses, but lingered too long over mine, tilting the bottle just a little too carefully. When he set it down, I noticed faint particles swirling in the liquid. "One last toast," he said, his voice catching. "To new beginnings." I lifted the glass slowly, watching the poison glitter beneath the chandelier. Then I smiled, leaning back in my chair. "Did I ever tell you about the day Claire was born?" Daniel froze. "Maybe later, Dad. This wine—" "No, now." I kept my glass raised, my voice firm. "Your mother was in labor for 14 hours, longest day of my life. But when I saw Claire's face, everything changed. I swore I'd protect her no matter what. I swore I'd give her the world." Claire's hand trembled in mine. For the briefest instant, her mask cracked. I thought I saw the little girl she used to be. Then it was gone, replaced by cold resolve. Daniel pushed his glass toward me. "That's a beautiful story. But let's drink first, Dad." I swirled the glass, the poisoned sediment spinning in slow, sinister circles, looking like drops of blood diluted in amber. The chandelier's light fractured through it, throwing red streaks across the tablecloth. My hand was steady, but inside, my chest burned. "Patience, Daniel," I said softly, each word deliberate, cutting. "Some things, like truth, can't be rushed." The room stretched taut, silence pressing in. Elena clattered in the kitchen, louder than necessary, buying me seconds. Daniel's jaw twitched. Claire squeezed my hand, too tight, her voice low, desperate. "Please, Dad, just drink." And then it came, the thunderous pounding at the front door. The pounding at the door didn't just shake the room, it shattered the play they had staged all night. "Princeton police! Open up!" Daniel went white, the blood draining from his face. His glass slipped from his hand, shattering across the marble floor. Claire gasped, jerking to her feet. Officers burst in, voices commanding, weapons drawn, but steady. "Daniel Brooks, Claire Brooks, you're under arrest for attempted poisoning, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse." "This is insane!" Daniel shouted, his voice cracking. "My father-in-law is confused. He doesn't know what he's saying." I rose, holding up my untouched glass of poisoned wine. The particles shimmered clearly under the chandelier. "I know exactly what I'm saying. This contains a compound called Viremax. They wanted me to sign away everything. My bakeries, my life's work, everything Evelyn and I built together." An officer took the glass carefully with latex gloves, nodding. Claire broke down, sobbing. "Dad, please." "We had no choice. They threatened us. They said they'd kill Daniel if we didn't." I stared at her, my chest heavy. "You had choices. You chose betrayal." Her cries echoed as officers pulled her away, Daniel thrashing as the cuffs locked around his wrists. "You'll regret this, Michael," he shouted. "You don't know what they'll do to me." But his words didn't move me. For the first time that night, I felt steady, anchored. The mansion, once a glittering monument to success, now felt like a hollow shell, echoing with lies, betrayal, and the sound of handcuffs snapping shut. The police station buzzed under the harsh flicker of fluorescent lights, the bulbs clicking faintly every few seconds. The air smelled of burnt coffee and cold metal. Radios crackled with bursts of static, while heavy boots thudded against the linoleum floors. I sat in a chair that felt too small, its steel legs scraping faintly when I shifted, staring through the reinforced glass into two separate holding cells. In one, Daniel paced like a caged predator, muttering to himself, clenching and unclenching his fists. In the other, Claire sat slumped against the wall, her silk dress now nothing but a crumpled reminder of the evening's performance. She had her face in her hands, shoulders shaking, and even from here I could hear her sobs. Detective Ramirez slid a file across the metal desk to me. "We found the documents in Daniel's office. Power of attorney, property transfers, the whole package. If you hadn't left when you did, Mr. Harris, they would have had everything signed tonight. You'd have woken up tomorrow stripped of your legacy." He sipped his coffee like he'd delivered this speech 100 times, but his eyes betrayed something harder. A rare respect. "You did the right thing calling us." I wanted to believe that. But as I looked through the glass at my daughter, her knees drawn to her chest like a child, it didn't feel like the right thing. It felt like I had just buried her while she was still breathing. Daniel spotted me watching. He pressed his face to the glass, his eyes wild, voice booming across the station. "Michael, you can't let them do this. You're my father too now." His fists slammed against the reinforced glass so hard a thin crack spread across it, his spit hitting the barrier as he roared. "I'll pay it back. I'll go to rehab. I'll change." Every strike echoed like a gunshot, less a plea than a threat dressed in desperation. I didn't move. I just stared at him, at the man who had tried to poison me and use my own daughter to carry it out. My silence seemed to ignite him further. He bellowed again, "They'll kill me if I don't pay. You don't understand." That was his refrain. Always someone else's fault. Always someone else to clean up his mess. From the women's cell, Claire's voice pierced the station, high and desperate. Her eyes, God, her eyes, once soft and innocent, now burned with raw terror. For a heartbeat, I wanted to run to her, to believe her tears, to forget everything but the fact that she was my daughter. But then I saw again her hand pressing mine at the table, urging me to drink. That memory cut deeper than her cries ever could. I almost faltered. Almost. But fear doesn't erase betrayal. And no amount of tears could wash away what she had already chosen. Detective Ramirez tapped the file with his pen. Attempted poisoning alone gets them 8 to 12 years. Add fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy, it's closer to 20. Claire might shave some time off if she cooperates. But Daniel? He shook his head. He's finished. The words landed heavy. 20 years. That was my daughter's 30s and 40s, evaporating into concrete walls. That was Evelyn's only child spending her best years in prison. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to remember. This wasn't my choice. It was theirs. Hours dragged into the early morning. Paperwork, statements, signatures, all the bureaucracy of justice. When at last they released me from the interrogation room, Elena was waiting in the lobby. Not as the housekeeper who served soup in silence, but as a woman who had risked everything to save a stranger. She stepped forward timidly. "Mr. Harris, are you all right?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached out and took her hand. "You saved my life. Don't ever tell yourself otherwise." Her eyes welled. I just couldn't let them do it. They thought I didn't understand English, that I was invisible. But I heard them. Every detail. The drug. The papers. The plan. They didn't even care that I was in the room. Invisible. The word lodged in me like a thorn. My own daughter had treated the woman who worked under her roof like furniture. And yet, this woman, the one they dismissed, had shown me more loyalty in one night than Claire had in years. I took a breath. "Elena, I have 7 bakeries. One in Crown Heights needs a manager. Someone with a spine. Someone I can trust. The pay is good. Benefits. Real security. Will you take it?" Her jaw dropped. "Mr. Harris, you don't have to." "I'm not doing this out of pity," I cut in. "I need people who do the right thing when it counts. Tonight, you proved you're one of them." Her voice cracked. "Then yes, I'll take it." For the first time all night, I felt something other than rage or sorrow. I felt hope. When the officers finally escorted me out into the pale light of dawn, I stood for a moment, breathing the cool air, letting it steady me. Behind me, the station buzzed with noise, shouted orders, phones ringing, my daughter's muffled crying. Ahead of me, Newark waited with its bakeries, its workers, its ordinary streets, where loyalty still meant something. I drove home in silence, Evelyn's picture in my wallet, her smile steady, as if reminding me she'd always believed in resilience. When I stepped inside my modest townhouse, I went straight to the refrigerator. Photos covered it. Claire as a child, Evelyn laughing, family barbecues frozen in time. I removed Claire's picture and slid it into a drawer. Not destroyed, not forgotten, but hidden, like a wound I wasn't ready to show the world. I left Evelyn's photo where it had always been, her smile glowing back at me. She had told me once, "Family is more than blood. Family is who shows up when it matters." Tonight, that truth was carved into me deeper than any wound. Claire had chosen greed. Daniel had chosen desperation. But Elena, someone who owed me nothing, had chosen courage. And that choice had given me my life back. In the end, I realized this. Blood may connect us, but it's loyalty and respect that truly make a family. Betrayal leaves scars, but courage can rebuild what was broken. And sometimes, the people who stand by you in silence prove more like family than those born into your name. That truth carried me home. Back to the bakery. Back to the life built on honesty, resilience, and compassion. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story touched you, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this channel, because there are more stories coming, and I'd love for you to be a part of them. The next morning, as the first light crept across Newark, I unlocked the bakery. The little brass bell above the door jingled, its familiar chime cutting through the silence like an old friend. Warm air, thick with the scent of fresh bread, rolled out into the street. Within minutes, the first regulars appeared. "Morning, Mr. Harris," one of them called, smiling wide. I nodded, my chest swelling with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. At the counter, I wrote Elena's name onto Monday's schedule. Not as a housekeeper, as a manager, a partner, family. I had lost a daughter that night, but I had gained a truth stronger than blood. Betrayal can cut you open, but loyalty, real loyalty, will stitch you back together. And that, I realized, is the only inheritance worth leaving behind.